With an admirable track record of being an 8-term member of parliament, Ms. Maneka Gandhi adds another significant milestone in her illustrious political career, that of being India's senior most parliamentarian. A veteran politician who has adeptly navigated the Indian political system to build a formidable reputation as an astute legislator and administrator. Her role as WCD minister, an impressive performance in public service, becomes distinctly apparent from the series of progressive legislations introduced by Ms. Gandhi during her successful tenure as Union Minister for Women and Child Development. She substantially contributed to the evolving narrative of gender politics in India by championing an extended maternity leave of 26 weeks for working women, including provision of 12 weeks leave for adopting mothers and commissioning mothers through the introduction of the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017. Under her leadership, the Women and Child Development Ministry worked towards making the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012 more effective by removing the time limit for reporting child sexual offences, thereby empowering victims of sexual abuse to come forward and seek justice. A comprehensive campaign against female infanticide and gender discrimination was also launched by Ms. Gandhi through Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Social activism. Her role: she founded People for Animals in 1992. Under her tutelage, the organization has emerged as the largest animal welfare organization of the country, with more than 35 shelters situated across India. Spurred by People for Animals' success in courts, Ms. Gandhi directed the organization to engage in the strategy of training and sensitizing judicial magistrates and police personnel about animal welfare laws in India. This has resulted in a widening pool of law enforcers aware about the legal course of action to undertake in order to make animal welfare laws more effective on the ground. Through the efforts of the organization, the Bar Council of India has now introduced animal law in the syllabuses of law colleges. Thank you for doing that for us, ma'am. To continue with the introduction, her multifaceted roles and accomplishments require a special mention. Ms. Gandhi's stalwart contribution in animal welfare has been widely recognized world over. She has received numerous awards from distinguished platforms, from the Rukmini Dev Arundel Animal Welfare Award in 2011 to Lord Erskine Award from the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in 1992, from the Gian Marching Animal Welfare Prize in 1997 to the Venu Menon Animal Allies Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award in 1999. And to list a few others: Prani Mitra Award, Award for Excellence in the Sphere of Truth, Nonviolence and Vegetarianism, the Ahimsa and Sadbhavana Award, the Devliben Charitable Trust Award, the International Women's Association Woman of the Year Award, and Deenanath Mangeshkar Adi Shakti Puraskar in the field of environment and animal welfare. All are testimony to Ms. Gandhi's work as an animal welfare activist. Ms. Gandhi's numerous editorial opinion pieces on animal welfare is leading national dailies, are well researched, engaging, informative, and reflect great attention to detail. Her creative pursuits have also generated authorship of a large number of books, reaching out to an eclectic audience of children and adults alike. To mention a few: the Penguin Book of Hindu Names for Boys, the Penguin Book of Hindu Names for Girls, Heads and Tails, Brahma's Hair, the Mythology of Indian Plants, the Book of Trees, a Vasudaika Kutumbakam perspective. Ms. Gandhi continues to nurture a legacy that is deeply entrenched in public service. She has her task cut out as she takes over the reins of a new constituency and endeavors to win the hearts of people of Sultanpur. The mission to create inspiring benchmark standards in public service and animal welfare will always be defining hallmarks associated with the name, the one and only Maneka Gandhi ji. It gives me great pleasure, madam, and it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce you. And I request madam to please enlighten us with a brief talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, though that was unnecessary. But I'm not going to speak very much because we have two people who have been colleagues of mine from the beginning. Alpana Bhatia, who is a proper expert, unlike me, and runs India's only wildlife hospital, urban wildlife hospital in Bangalore, in Kingeri. And we have Vasanti Wadi, if she's joined us, who has done sterling work for the Twin Cities. So I'm just going to concentrate on a simple things on how to stop the wildlife trade. I was instrumental in helping to make the WCCB, the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. This was supposed to be the nodal point, the sort of FBI or the CBI for all animal trade in India. Unfortunately, it's not done very well. Recently, we've managed to get 12 more people appointed to it, but I can't see it working at all. So basically, we are on our own. This is one department that has no feet on the ground, none at all. Why am I concentrating on wildlife trade? Because you have a beautiful campus. You have the most stunning looking animals in it, especially the birds, that huge, big. And Alpana, what is the name of that big bird with the kind of green, white feathers that we were just looking at in the film? Anyway, it's utterly beautiful. A crane of some sort. The thing is that you will not be able to keep them for very long while the trade is still open. And now we have another problem, and that is the trade is off the ground and into the air. If you look at the net, you will see that everything, including tiger skins, are being traded on the net. Fish, the rarest fish in India, are all going through the net to collectors abroad. All the birds that are coming into India are being smuggled in through containers from Calcutta and Chennai, again, for collectors in India. We have even found gorillas coming into India. We found a man recently in Delhi with 2 ostriches in his house. Not emus, ostriches. And he turned out to be one of the biggest ivory smugglers in India. So no wildlife habitat or wildlife stands a chance if we don't stop the trade. Therefore, we need now to understand how to stop the trade. I would suggest that every group that we have, every student we have, every person that we can find to influence or to take interest in the animal welfare should monitor animal markets. You should have a team, by you I mean all of us, should have a team working only on the net. For instance, last year we found about 18 sites supposedly for Hindu ritual, which were all selling things like jackal penises and other wildlife items supposedly for good luck. So we had them caught, but there will be another 100. So one is the constant monitoring of animal markets and wrapping them up, cultivating and rewarding informers, getting the media to write on and on and on about every single time we give them information. For instance, we have just found in Guntur now has become the center of trade for donkey skins. I know that doesn't come into the wild animal trade, but you must know this. For 3 years, I have been writing that China, from 2013, is making a sweet called Ijayo, and it is only made out of donkey skins. They have killed every single donkey in China, Mongolia, Pakistan, Afghanistan. They have opened 4 donkey slaughterhouses in Africa, and 6 countries have had to pass legislation banning donkey killing. They have almost raped India entirely of our donkeys because people don't have to take the meat. They simply cut the throat of the donkey, take the skin off. And Guntur is the center. But we only found that now when we started picking up trucks from all over India taking donkeys to Guntur. China has made it tax-free. All import of donkey skins is tax-free in China. So therefore, all our COVID attacked businessmen have now graduated to this nonsense. So if you don't, we need to study a lot what is being traded. Even in India, wildlife people on the ball got to know that about the pangolin trade being the highest in India. I mean, the highest traded animal in India. Only 4 years ago, Gandhi was saying every last bit of animal in India only for China. Unfortunately, now he's saying every last bit of animal that we have, whether wild or, as I said, donkey wise. We need to monitor restaurants that are likely to sell wild animal meat, and there are. For instance, we've just discovered in Ahmedabad 8 shops that are only selling nilgai meat. So these need to be monitored. Therefore, we need informers all the time. And between us, we need to make some kind of platform, a joint platform, in which we put in money, which will reward informers. We need to be talking to the police on what to look out for. Because wildlife people on the ground, government, they have no feet on the ground. Delhi has 3 crore people. And how many wildlife inspectors does it have? 2. The head of the wildlife department is a man who came from Chandigarh, who I had caught 6 very rare ducks in Chandigarh, given them to him, and at night he ate them. So this is our wildlife chief of Delhi. And underneath him, he has 2 inspectors who go nowhere and do nothing. They were caught, in fact, stealing snakes from the zoo at night to sell them to Madaris. These were the wildlife inspectors. So we need to make an entirely alternate system, which we have not been able to do. Now, we have made a system, it's taken us 40 years, to do it for dogs. But it seems to me that dogs, I mean, up to my here, we're trying to save dogs. We have not been able to make this system for the other animals. So we need to inform tourists. If somebody can make posters for animal parts to tourists when they come in, they cannot buy peacock feathers. They cannot buy shells and corals. Now in Goa, we have discovered about, when was it, in February last year, a man who opened a shop outside the single tourist, they have a flea market there once a week, which is very well known. And one shop just outside this flea market, it was catering to the flea market, was a man who used to come from Malaysia every 2 weeks and only bring in python coats, python shoes, python bags. And he was in league with the Goa customs people. He was in every 2 weeks with suitcases full of python skins and python jackets made. And I sent the WCCB. First time around, they couldn't even find the shop. So they came, stayed in a hotel, went back. The second time around, when they were threatened with their jobs, they found the shop. The man was arrested for all of 1 day, but the customs people are still there. So he's probably back in another form. Unless we do something for our own country, government will not do it. So horns, feathers, hair, shell, corals, these are the things we need to make an extensive list with. In Karnataka, I don't remember where it was, we found a factory that was selling keychains. And each keychain had an insect in it. And all these were going to China and then from there to the rest of the world. But all the insects were rare insects. Butterflies, moths, scorpions. Then we need to, as I said, again and again, we need to monitor websites that are selling live birds, animal parts, and thousands of such. You will find thousands of these parts every day. For instance, there is a fish. It's, I forget the name of it, starts with a C. It's a transparent fish. India's largest trade of fish is this fish. What we do is we take the fish, which is a tiny fish this big, and then we take injections of wall paint, just normal paint, and we put dots and stripes and colors, and then send it abroad. If you look at the net, we have at least 1,000 traders just trading in this poor fish. And it dies within 3 weeks because the paint eats it up. Obviously, the paint is poison. But it's that fish itself is illegal to send. Then I would suggest that you look at circuses. We had banned, when 30 years ago, I had banned wild animals in circuses. But they still are using the odd animal here and there. They pretend they're just taking them along for the ride, but we should be very aggressive when it comes to circuses. We should be very aggressive when it comes to zoos. Nobody has paid attention to zoos because we presume they're government. Last week in Calcutta, it was people, the zoo caretakers were discovered taking out birds from the zoo to sell them to hobbyists. In Gwalior, almost every cage is full of goats because they've sold all the wild animals and they keep replacing them with goats. Now, when I went to Guwahati, a large number of the bird enclosures were full of crows because they had sold the birds there. Birds, snakes, small animals, all these are for sale in the zoos itself. So they will write down that they died. In actual fact, they found their way somewhere else. So why do we not have somebody to monitor the zoos? But we don't do it ourselves. Now, about 250 zoos are illegal. For instance, the Municipal Zoo of Nagpur. Sorry, I'm just going to put this on. Of Municipal Zoo Nagpur is illegal. They have all the zoos in Rajasthan are illegal. They have been denotified and not allowed to operate because they're so bad. But they carry on anyway. Nobody listens to Government of India. So either we use the courts liberally, which is what we should be doing. As a team, every team, then, can you hear me? Because you're suddenly off.
We can.
Can you hear me? Alpna, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So the next thing would be to have madaris. We still have madaris who are on the streets with monkeys, with snakes, much, much less than before because we've managed to drive them out. And one of our greatest successes as a team has been, and I would give 90% of credit to Karthik, is taking the bears off the road. After all, you and I have seen them as children, but thank God this generation has not seen them at all. But that took us a long struggle of 10 years to get rid of. But we need to do the same with elephants. There's a case that's been put in by Suparna Ganguly, and we are interveners in that. It's now 17 years since it's been put in. It's just making no sense to me that it's never come up. Then, as I said, we come back to madaris. Another form that is taking place here is a lot of buildings take wild langurs and tie them up, supposedly to drive off the other monkeys, rhesus. Those langurs all come from the mountains, and those are almost extinct now. So if you see a building or any shop that has langurs on it, a langur tied to it, you may need to do massive entrapment. These are gangs roaming around. It's not just one langur person. The man has about 150 langurs, which he sends out every day. So we need to catch them in one fell swoop. You can catch monkey by monkey, massive cases. Mongooses. Then we come to animal fights. Cockfighting in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana is illegal. The High Court has declared it, but you still have it. And there is absolutely no body out on the road on that day or 2 days before stopping it. You have wild bird fights, bulbul fights in Assam. You have Goa in which People for Animals first case, we stopped bullfighting. That last week, there were 30 fights in just one part of Goa called Kolva, which I had to step in again to stop. So these are elephants in temples. These are again wild animals. Why are we allowing them to be kept in temples where they're almost beaten to death all the time? So one is you need to have a group which pays informers. Secondly, we need to train our people on how to look, what is to be looked for. I have named some of the things. To train, we need to have universities like yours train wildlife people. You know, if the law colleges can simply just train for animal advocates, we need to now train for proper wildlife researchers, wildlife activists. What is my great dream in life? I have two. One is before I die to start India's best, probably only good veterinary college. We just have 33 so far, producing 3,300 veterinarians, all of which are probably the worst in the world. So we need to have one good veterinary college, and we need to have one animal welfare degree giving college, which gives degrees for wildlife researchers, wildlife activists, animal activists, shelter managers, laboratory managers. For instance, the zoo has no wildlife people on it. It's run by a forest officer on top who only knows about trees, and underneath him, class 4 employees. That's it. All our zoos. So you have 25% mortality of wild animals. All your, likewise, all our government institutions are run like that in animal welfare. We do not have city management people. So we need to have degrees given for animal welfare in different forms. Can you hear me, or am I?
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. You need to, now you need to lobby. People for Animals does a lot of lobbying, but we need to lobby much more for trained wildlife veterinarians. Suppose I were to even rescue a snake in Delhi. I haven't a clue whom to give it to. Not one doctor knows what to do with it. So how do I save urban wildlife? In Bangalore, Alpana gets all of them, and she's got thousands of animals so far given to her for rescue. But what do I do? They don't teach it in colleges or schools. So what to do then? The second is, I would suggest that we need to have some kind of reporting agency or lobbying for a reporting agency. How do you report poachers? We need to work much better. For instance, let me give you one example, and I'll finish now, which is we joined the CITES, international law of the UN, 40 years ago. And in 40 years, India still does not have a CITES office. So suppose I were to catch animals coming from abroad. There is nowhere where I can report them because we don't have a CITES office. There is nowhere I can take permission to send animals abroad which are smuggled there, or we don't have a CITES office. So we need to lobby for that, most of all. India is a very peculiar country. 99% of the power lies with government, and not with MPs, not with MLAs, but straight with the executive and with the bureaucrats. So we need to find ways to influence them to bring in legislation and to bring in rules that will protect our wildlife. We don't have much time left because we only have about 15% left of what we had. And if we wait another 5 years or 6 years, it'll go down to 5%. Yesterday alone, I received a man from Pune, a man in Delhi, boasting of the number of leopards that he had killed. Just like that. He said he goes weekend hunting, kills leopards, and he showed him with dead bodies and standing with a gun. I forwarded this to the wildlife chief of Uttarakhand, but I will change my name if he finds it. So we need to do it on our own. And that's what we need to lobby for. Thank you for this opportunity. I've, if anybody wants to ask any questions, they can. Otherwise, you move on.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the enlightening talk that you've given. As usual, it was a pleasure listening to you. So inspirational. You've just charged us with new energy, and we are just bubbling to do more. Hope to connect with you and take talk to you in more detail so that we can see the possibilities that you were talking about during your talk over here and take it forward and not use this as just a one-time lecture just on 3rd of March, because this is not about just one day out of a 365 days calendar. I totally agree with you. But many of the points that you have raised, many of the issues that you have spoken about are very relevant and they need immediate attention, as you have pointed out. So thank you so much for that. And it was lovely listening to you. Okay. And now to take forward the program, I would invite Ms. Alpana Bhartiya to give us her talk in a while I introduce you to the rest of the team. Alpana Bhartiya is one of those few who take pride in working for the welfare of animals and conservation of our environment. As one of our founder trustees of the Bangalore-based NGO, People for Animals, Alpana Bhartiya has been an advocate for animal welfare, rescue, and health. It is through her involvement with PFA since 1996 that she's been able to dedicate the last 25 years of her life promoting the rescue of over 27,000 urban wildlife across 203 species. One of Alpana's notable contributions has been towards promoting the rescue of snakes. She, along with a large team of vets and rehabilitators, has worked towards the treatment and rehabilitation of hundreds of injured and displaced snakes in the city. Alpana also promotes the use of integrated medicinal techniques in the wildlife hospital services. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Alpana. So over to you for the talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And taking onward from where Mrs. Gandhi, she's been a huge inspiration in my life, and her tireless efforts are, keeps us all on our toes. And as what she's very pertinently said, that unless we each realize that, the onus is each one of us, and all it takes is but one person to have the intent and to bring it into action. And that energy is very, very valuable. The power of one. And the Hyderabad University has got a beautiful campus. It's huge. It's a green space. And so many students, like as she advised us, we must have a litigation wing, we must legislate, we must have enforcement, all the young students are going to go out in the world and become these kind of officers. And even as just as a normal citizen of this, 55% of the world's population is already in cities. So urban wildlife, the importance to understand. We shouldn't just feel that it's out there in the forest or somewhere. We need to bring the forest into the cities as well. Like the Hyderabad University is a green forest space. But unless we can have the cities, the contiguous green cover, going through the city, we lose out. We are just going to have fragmented, the cheetah population, the deer population. You have pangolins, you have peacocks, but they will not be viable as a survival a species, and or genetic diversity is lost. If we lose this, you have the forest on the left of you, you have forest north, south, but the city needs a contiguous corridor of greens. And even if it's lost, it doesn't matter. We can always reclaim whatever what the 20th century was done, discovery of warfare, chemicals, use in pesticides, all that can be redone, greened, cities can again become, we can take back whatever was taken and constructed. So if we are aware and we work on that, it can be taken back. And I think what we need to also understand that every citizen has a duty, to create the green spaces for the wildlife to live in cities. I'm talking more from the urban wildlife aspect, which is a huge component of a person's understanding. Unless the person is sensitized and the city level to observe, to notice, and to help every animal and every wildlife, to be able to appreciate the bees, the butterflies, and to create habitats. Unless you create habitats in the city, and it can be done in small measures, in your veranda, in your little garden, if you have on your terrace, create nesting boxes, put water, it's a dry season, give shelter, give provide housing, like a little hotel for beetles. All you need is to collect your twigs and create a cover, and thereby you promote the insect species. So when students get aware of not only accepting what green space they have, but to take onus and responsibility to create more, to invite the wildlife into, create wildlife habitats and extend it, and like snakes, there's so many in Hyderabad, and like in Bangalore also, we rescued over 10,000 snakes. As Mrs. Gandhi said, snakes, firstly, very few doctors would know how to handle a snake. A bird, everyone, or a mammal, everyone would be willing to understand and to handle. But snakes is such a morbid fear. There's so many myths. Mrs. Gandhi has really, busted so many myths, but we have to be constantly at it. Unless we're constantly at it, it doesn't really go. We've managed to, remove dancing of bears on the streets. We've left them, let them be in the forest. But what happens when you have a inhabitant of the city, which is seen as a wild creature, shouldn't be there. No, wildlife belongs to the city. Urban wildlife belongs to the city, and we must respect them. We must take care of them. We must create the habitat, the environment, the nurturing, and we are also willing, we've done a lot of work with snakes and the rehabilitation. And so vets, like Mrs. Gandhi said, the model college, for veterinarians, where so we are also providing workshops, training for vets, for rehabilitators at our shelter. And like taking wildlife, in our city, we don't realize what is wildlife. The squirrel is your wildlife. In your home, the spider is your wildlife. The lizard is the wildlife. They're all controllers of pests. If we didn't have lizards, if we didn't have spiders, we would have had so many more mosquitoes. One bat, we all get scared. We close our ears thinking it's going to eat us, or suck blood. But a single bat can maybe eat up to 500 mosquitoes in an hour. So we need the bats. The bats, they are the pollinators of over 500 trees and plants. 300, I think 300 or so fruits come from bats. So the drink, we've all heard, some of you may have heard of this Mexican drink, tequila. That's entirely pollinated by bats. The banana, chewing gum, it all comes from bats. So the importance of the urban dwelling wildlife is very important. It's not only out there in the forest. Like we get pangolins from the Rayalaseema district of Andhra Pradesh. It comes in the sand trucks. I think we've got about at least 15 or so pangolins. And where, otherwise, so that's where it's found, so we need vigilance at when it's being dug up. There's a huge underground trade, and we all need to be vigilant. Like, what is somebody doing? Why is it? Whoever can speak to them, hey, what are you doing? Just try to understand what's happening. That's only when crime comes up. And to appreciate, if each one understands, like in Bangalore, we've rescued over 203 different types of species of animals. There are much more, but that's the ones which have come into, been rescued and rehabilitated by us. We've crossed over 27,000 wildlife. So in Hyderabad, also we need, Hyderabad and Bangalore, very similar cities. They're high-tech cities, lots of glass buildings, tall buildings, on the Deccan Plateau, granite underground. You all have a little river, and you'll have the water bodies. How to keep the integrity of the water bodies safe and clean. And I think the students need to be enthused with Mrs. Gandhi's spirit and just imbibe it, catch it, and also plant. Not only here, the university is already green. We have to look at the area which is not green. Each of us plants a little shrub, ground cover, tree, whatever, small, big, even if it's just putting a pot in your terrace, your veranda or window, any space that you can, that creates a contiguous cover for wildlife. and must plant native trees, Bangalore airport, Hyderabad airport, all have these huge swaths of Duranta and, alien species which are invasive to the country and does nothing for the wildlife. It is not providing anything much, and it kills the native indigenous species. So we must respect the weeds that grow. They're not just weeds, as you said, medicinal plants. They all come from the weeds, what we call weeds. Weeds is Duranta, which is, a foreign species. It's Parthenium's a weed, but not a local species. And like the squirrel, that's a wildlife everybody is seeing in the city. Squirrel is important. We think it's just what good is a squirrel? But no, the squirrel, when its fecal pellets they drop to the ground, that's got a mycorrhizal fungi, in it, and that when it infects the tree, that creates nitrogen fixating bacteria, and only then the plant can use that soil. So it fixes the soil nitrogen, and otherwise you see, trees in storms they just fall. The foreign species, the gulmars, whatever's they fall. But the indigenous species are rock solid because they also have the wildlife living on them, and they create a healthy environment microcosm for the wildlife to survive. Like a crow, crow is everyone think it's a nuisance, but no, the crow also, the humble crow, which is there in every neighborhood. If we didn't have crows, we would have so much more garbage. If we didn't have snakes, we would have so much more rats, rodents. If we didn't have bats, we would have so much more, again, mosquitoes and night flying insects. All are kept under control by these. So we have to be sensitive to urban wildlife, because we, as since you're in Hyderabad, I'm in Bangalore, Mr. Gandhi in Delhi, we all in the urban, the village people are anyways more sensitive. Their rural lives depend on animals. But we need to create this concrete glass structures into wildlife zones. I think that's, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alpana, for the enlightening talk. If somebody has a question, you can raise your hands or maybe put that in the chat box, or just go ahead, unmute yourself and ask. Any one of the speakers.
And another thing, I'll just like to add, now the COVID has taught us the importance of wildlife in captive stress. Somebody in Wuhan wanted to have bat soup, so they captured a wild bat and kept it in captivity, which created, all sorts of mutations in the viruses, which jumped to humans. And so wildlife cannot be in captivity, whether it's for environmental reasons or human health, or whether for the wildlife trade. We really have to focus on that. We can't let this happen. If we all combine and each one of us takes the task up, we can combat it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
To add to what Ms. Alpana has just spoken, I was always wondering, even as a child and as an adult now, why is it that all the roads, the highways are lined with non-fruiting trees? So what happens to all these monkeys who are hungry, who are just hopping from one tree to another tree to find food for their survival? So instead of, planting, I do not know, I've never understood what's the rationale behind planting non-fruiting trees across the roads. I think we should probably...
There's no rationale, nobody's applied their minds, and there's no... if one just has to plant any ficus, the people, the banyan, the anjeer, the wild fig, there's so many which are sheltered with thousands of creatures, not just monkeys, birds, bats, everything. 1,000 creatures can live.
There's another reason. In 1983, some crazy, criminal bureaucrat passed a law saying no fruit trees should be planted in the forest. The result has been that monkeys were 4 crore monkeys then. They're down to 4 lakh, which means we're looking at genocide. But those, when they were 4 crore, we paid no attention to them. They were not a problem in our lives. When they were down to 4 lakhs, they're only in our cities. You go and find me a monkey in the forest. There's not a single monkey. In Vrindavan, they spent, I think, about 6 crore rupees. They caught the monkeys, put them back into the forest, and within 15 days, they were back. In Delhi, they caught 16,000 monkeys and put them into the bhatti mines, and within a year, they're back. Because there are no fruit trees in the forest. So this is one of the things, like Kalpana was saying, we have to have a contiguous green belt. That is something we have to lobby for all the time. You cannot have small, isolated pockets. you know, and unless you have that contiguous belt, everything will be at your doorstep and then out of your life forever. So monkeys specifically. Then Himachal Pradesh took 500 crore rupees and tried to do something so stupid that they almost destroyed human and monkey. They decided to spend that money on sterilizing monkeys. Now, I spoke to them again and again, saying sterilizing dogs and sterilizing monkeys is a different thing altogether. When you catch a monkey to sterilize it, the rest of the troops are mother, father, grandmother, great aunt, everybody lives together. You catch one monkey or two monkeys for sterilization. The rest of the troop runs. So they leave their area and they go into another area. They go into another area. And they will they go into another area. Then there's a fight. So some of them go in more urban, some of them go more into the fields, but they all get disturbed. Those two monkeys, when they come back, there is no family to rejoin. And we don't know which troop it was. So those then go wild and go straight into your villages or your buildings and start harassing them, because sterilization has no effect whatsoever on their temperament except to make it worse. Testosterone, when you remove it from dogs, makes them calmer, removes the reasons for them to fight. But monkeys, no, it gives them more of a reason to fight. So they spent 500 crores and now they've taken a shoot at sight order. Now, the other thing is wild boar. Wild boar, if somebody were to ask me, what is the single most important animal in the forest, it's wild boar. And for 2, 3 reasons. One is we have a large leaf in our forests called bracken, and bracken is spread all over the forest floor, and it doesn't allow the seeds to germinate because it closes off the sunlight from the ground. The only creature in the world that can eat bracken is wild boar. So if you do not have them there, your bracken spreads and your germination in the forest stops. Secondly, wild boar is the food of all your large cats. In Chandrapur, the minister 4 years ago killed, I think, about 200 or 300 wild boar in one day. As a result, 66 tigers that lived there all started coming out of the forest and got run over by the train. They took a train right next to the forest, which is again the stupidest thing to do. And in one day alone, four tigers were killed because they were all coming out for food with their children. And why? Because the wild boar was killed. So most politicians simply do not understand the linkages. And since they don't, and we don't bother to explain, so our strategies, we offer no strategies to the government. In fact, most animal welfare people don't even know who the MP is. We do not bring this onto the political plate at all, because when election time comes, not one person stands up and asks their member of parliament, are you vegetarian, for instance? What are you going to do about meat export, which is killing our wildlife? Because your buffaloes, your cows, all your goats are sitting in the forest. All these tigers have not been killed by poachers. They have been killed by shepherds, bringing in buffaloes, cows, goats, and poisoning the water holes so that all the large cats are killed, so that the space is available to them to make meat growing animals. So every time we export meat, we have exported a tiger with it, and a couple of vultures, and a number of birds, and all the leopards, and every other animal that we can think of. Every dead body of a buffalo has the dead bodies of 6 other wild animals in it. But it hasn't occurred to us to even ask our members of parliament, our MLAs, what are you going to do about meat export? After all, 70% of the meat in this country is exported. Only 30% is eaten by Indians. But we haven't bothered to do that because we don't see the linkages. We think, oh, they're divisions. There are environmentalists, there are wildlife activists, there are dog lovers, there are go bhakts. But it's actually all just one. I think the only one who straddles all 4 fields is me. And I do that with the sheer force of my anger. So if we were to form one body and just think of ourselves as one body and look at the linkages, you'd be able to save many, the tiger ultimately. And when I say the tiger, I mean the apex, get to the apex. Sorry if I interrupted, but I just think that was important. We don't realize the importance of, as Alpana said, the bat. Do you know why the bat is regarded as a vermin? Alpana, do you know why? Because when they were making the Wildlife Act and putting in vermin, somebody said rat and then somebody said bat. And because they rhymed, they came in. I promise you this is the truth. Because these acts are made by completely illiterate people. So, I'm surprised we don't have some more bat, rat, cat in that as vermin. It has it's completely senseless. Nobody even understands. The government of India in the 70s went to Ellora, and there were about 5 or 6 million bats there. And they just, in one day, exterminated the lot. Just put pesticide all over and exterminated all of them. And then within a year, the Aurangabad farmers went on strike because they said that our pests are up by 30%.
Yeah, the mangoes and everything would have gotten eaten.
Everything finished.
Everything finished with the flies.
So then they put in $1 billion to re-establish the bats. So they brought in bats from outside. But of course, it's going to take another 100 years to bring the bats back to 2 million or 3 million. But that was how it happens. Now, the Andamans, Mrs. Gandhi had started a program to revive the crocodile. Which crocodile? I mean, whatever crocodile. Alpana, you know better than me, the name of the crocodile. Okay.
I know the crocodiles of Andamans.
Okay, there were 17 left, 17. So then a huge program was put in to revive them. So now they have reached the huge figure of 400, which again is far below revival level. But now the government has decided to kill them all because they put the dhabas. For the first time, the dhabas were allowed on the beaches to sell meat. So now the crocodiles, instead of going and trying to attack people and going for fish, they lie at the wait, at the edge of the ocean, waiting for the scraps of meat that are thrown to them every evening. And so they've become a nuisance to tourists. And so now you kill them all. So you spend money first killing them, then you spend money reviving them, then you spend money killing them.
This is the cycle. Non-viable population.
It's a non-viable population, but at least it was getting there from 17 to 400. But it took 45 years.
But I think in this 21st century, this is the 21st year of the 21st century, and I think this population, the students, they need to really take up the cause. Each one needs to pledge and each one needs to take it on. But you've been doing this task for so many years. You are one individual and you've taken it to such a huge level. Otherwise, India didn't know what is animal welfare. It was just Gau Mata and this and that.
Unfortunately, it's still there. It's still there. I've taken it like 1% up. It's still there at dog lovers, Gau Matas, and leftist environmentalists who are all seen as leftists because we want to protect the forest, and that's seen as extreme left.
Yes.
And saving the cow is seen as extreme right. It just is foolish. Anyway, I'm going to take your leave now because I'm going off for a meeting. Bye-bye. And